Welcome to another edition of the Scuttlebutt podcast from Trapping Inc. TV. We are, and in this podcast, we are up in the northwest corner of Alberta. We're up on the Steen River line. We're chasing wolverine and lynx, and it's an awesome trip as always. But the reason for the special introduction is something happens after the end of the podcast that I didn't know was going to happen. So you don't want to hang up. You don't want to close off. You want to stick around. Rennie actually sings us a song that he wrote when he was a 17-year-old out on his first trap line. Without further ado, let's get to it.
My slipper keeps falling off. All right, everything good? Alrighty. Welcome to Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'm Rich Mellon, and today we are coming on location from a very special place, the middle of frostbite, northern Alberta. We're actually in the far northwest corner of Alberta. We are about 30 miles from the Northwest Territories border, and we are 30 miles west from the BC border. So we're just about as close as we can get into the corner of Northwest Alberta. I am here with three generations of Schaub men. Okay, Rennie, the patriarch, the old dog. Kevin, which you'll all remember from last year on the show, and Kevin's son, Connor. Now, we have been out today trapping. We've had a great time. And when I said we were going to sit down and do this podcast, Kevin took me aside and he says, listen, he says, I'll warn you right now. He says, don't ask Dad about the old days because you ain't got enough batteries. Well, I put in the big battery. So we're going to talk. We're going to talk trapping, and we're going to start right now. And I'm going to ask you about the old days. How long have you been doing this?
Well, I started on a residential trap line when I was 8, catching squirrels, weasels, muskrats, and
8 years old.
8 years old, and so I really, really enjoyed it. I used to go out every weekend at nights after school, and by the time I got to 16, I was already looking for a registered trap line. And so at that time, all the trap lines were pretty well filled up in Alberta, but I found one. Al Boggs was the Fish and Wildlife Officer in Fort McMurray back in them days, and he found me a trap line at Legend Lake, and that's by Name Your Lake. It was 80 miles northwest of Fort McMurray by air, and so there was 4 townships there. So I bought it for, $20 a year at that time. Yeah. And anyways, I arranged to go up there by air to build a cabin in the spring. So I left school on April 1st.
What year?
That was 1971.
1971.
Yeah, and so I left school and I went up there with my cousin, and so we flew up there to build this cabin. They were supposed to come back and get us in 30 days. So that was the plan anyway. So we brought about enough for about 5 weeks of supplies, and we flew up there with a Cessna 180, loaded right to the pin. In fact, the only one that had a seat was the pilot. We were sitting on a stove, and we had traps, we had all kinds of stuff, Swede saws, axes. There was no power saws back then. So anyways, we got there, we landed on the lake, and I could still remember that. When he took off, and you could just hear him, and then he just kind of disappeared. It was just, and it was quiet. It was the first time I had heard such quietness, you know.
Yeah.
So we spent, I think, on the 4th night, we had ourselves a little cabin built. We built a floor in it. We built bunk beds. We had everything we needed in it, and so every day we used to go out and explore around the lake and stuff, because we were coming back in the fall to go trapping. So, come about 30 days, we didn't have that many rations yet left, and so we expected the airplane to come back anytime, and it just never showed up.
Just pull this away from you. You're popping a little bit. There we go.
So it never showed up. So a few days past the 30 days, we saw pretty north of Legend Lake. There's Legend Lake Tower, and we could see a little smoke there on a calm morning. And so anyways, we huffed her over there. It was about a 6-mile run, and we were in pretty good shape back then. And so anyways...
you were what, all of 17 or?
17 years
17.
old, and I was in good shape.
Yeah.
And so anyways, we got there, and so there was, I remember the guy's name, Egan Isaacson. He had came in, Swede, and he had come in to bring it was an indigenous fellow that was working for
forestry.
For forestry. So he brought him in, and so he was leaving as soon as he set them all up. So we told him our predicament, and he says, well, I'm sorry, but we don't have insurance to fly you guys out. And we said, well, how, can't you bring us somehow? And he says, no, you'd have to be an employee of forestry. And we said, well, do you have any jobs available? And he says, yeah, we got a couple jobs. We said, well, hire us, and then we'll fly out with you. And he goes, well, no, that's not how it works.
Oh, it's never that simple with government.
No.
We know that. Yeah.
So the plan was that he said, kind of sarcastically, he said, you show up Monday morning and I'll give you a job. This was Thursday night. So we went back to the cabin, and I remember we had a pound of bannock left, and we took a 22 and some of our stuff, and we headed out to walk out the Chippewa Lakes. Now it was around the first week of May. Creeks were already flowing. There was still a bit of snow, but it soon left, and then it was, muskegs were getting soft.
Oh,
it was hard going.
That's tough walking. That is.
Yeah.
It seems like you have to lift your ankles up to your Adam's apple every step, right? That spongy old moss, right?
Yeah. So we walked, and I think we crossed a couple of rivers and about 25 or so creeks. And we got there on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock. And we didn't have a map or anything. I knew I had to go west and I had to go south. And the rest, I guess the good Lord brought us there, but we made it there. And so then I had told the towerman that if you don't hear from us by Sunday night, call the RCMP. Because he had mobile phones that he could relay through. And so anyways, because Chippewa Lakes was in Slave Lake Forest, we had to relay to a tower that had both Lac La Biche and so on, and so Fort McMurray. And so anyways, we finally got the message to this towerman that we had made it. And he said, "Oh, I had forgot about you guys."
And that was so common back then, though.
Yes.
You're a man at 17,
Yeah.
and nobody worried about you.
No.
You head off to the bush for a week or two, and I remember, when my wife and I first got married, I'd go hunting, go moose hunting for 2 weeks. She wouldn't hear a word from us, and when we showed up, it was how big a moose did you get? All that kind of stuff. Nobody was concerned, right?
No.
Today, if you were to throw a 17-year-old kid out in the bush and walk away, they'd have you in jail, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So that was the start of your trapping.
Yeah, so I come out, we worked for forestry, and I got on the towers, and I was a spare towerman, so I went to L's Tower, Birch, Legend, and I replaced people that wanted the weekend off, that kind of thing. And so I replaced this guy out of Algar Tower, and he wanted to go to see Klondike Days, which is normally 2 or 3 days, and he never showed up again.
Oh.
And because there was only 3 months left, they said, okay, well, you might as well just stay on here. It was a 6-month tower. So my mom and dad brought my team of dogs there because you could drive there.
Right.
And every week or 10 days, I had a hole in a muskeg, and they'd bring me some tullabies so I could feed my dogs.
Yeah.
And I was training my dogs while I was on the towers.
There you go.
And so anyways, when November 22nd we were waiting until we had the first snow so we could leave Fort McKay. And so the first snow was November 22nd. We took off, and we took off with 2 skidoos at first. And by the time we got to Garnisher Lake, there was already like 18 inches of snow.
Wow.
And so when we got to the Birch Mountains or Birch Hills, it was we just couldn't go anywhere. We had little lands back then.
Oh, the 250 a land.
Yes, 12 horse. Yeah.
12 horse.
Yeah, 12 horsepower. And so.
Connor thinks that's so funny.
Yeah.
How many horses was that thing you were driving today?
96.
Yeah, 96. Yeah.
Yeah. So they consisted of take a pair of snowshoes and walk up and break trail. And then the following day, we would push the eland up the hills. And then the third day, we were sometimes able to bring the skimmers up with the elands.
Right.
And so it was quite and then by then it snowed 6 inches. We started all over again.
So was it traction getting you or power?
It was just it was no power.
No power.
And the hills were like the forehead of a Holstein cow. I mean, it was,
Forehead of a Holstein cow. I gotta write that down. So, did you ever get to trap your trap line where you built your cabin?
We finally got there about a week before Christmas, and we started on November 22nd. And
November 22nd, and you got to wow.
Yeah. So and the reason we even got there is we went back out and to get my dogs, and I had only 4 dogs. So I pushed up the hills and I rode down the hills, and like the old story, going to school and uphill both ways. It seemed like that. It was like that going to the trap line. It was just steady uphill.
He told me, he says, Grandpa's going to tell you about going to school uphill both ways. Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah. So, but we had a halfway camp. We had a wall tent set up at 44 miles.
Yeah.
And that was kind of our halfway camp. And so we stayed overnight there with the dogs, and then the next day we took off again. And
so was that on your trap line, that halfway camp? No?
Oh, no, not at all. No. We had to get to Garnerter Lake, which was kind of they had an Indian reserve on there.
Yeah.
And so there were so many cut lines back them days that we had to hire somebody to go with them to show us the way to get there first. And so once I went, and that was another story. We were in the middle of nowhere, and this native fellow says, "I think we should stay here tonight." So he started this little fire. Now like you heard about the native fire. It's very small.
Yeah.
And they're very good at it.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, we had some tea, and I can't remember eating anything, but he said, "Well, time to go to bed," and he just leaned over and fell asleep, and I shook like a cat on a tin roof. Like I couldn't believe how cold it was, and it never bothered him a bit. And the next morning he had some more tea, and away we went. And we finally made it to Garnerter Lake. And Garnerter Lake had 2 big lakes, and there was some narrows in between.
Right.
And in January, beginning December, January, there's so many, the whitefish go in there, you can almost walk across.
Really?
And I remember we had a little piece of net, and one would just stay on shore, and the other one would just kind of walk around with chest waders. And like we'd get like 180 or whatever in one scoop. And these were jumbo whites.
Big ones, 8-pounders, yeah.
Now, when I left Fort Mackay, Al Boggs told me, he says, I'm going to give you a piece of paper that's going to allow you can shoot a moose, a caribou, you can net in any of the lakes up there for your dogs or your
so you could
survival.
Live subsistently.
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay.
And because he says, I'm going to go and check up on you, because he didn't want me to go. He said, it's not for a 17-year-old,
Right.
Shouldn't be doing that, but I was way too stubborn. But anyways, when we got to Name Your Lake, which was the lake we couldn't cross because it was steep hills all around, but we had to go across because of the overflow. I just couldn't find a way across with the skidoo.
Right.
And we tried a couple times, sunk that little elan. Next day you had to come chop it out of and tip it over, knock all the ice out, and then drive out again until you got enough courage to try it again.
Courage is one word for it. My wife would have a different word.
Yeah. But when I brought the dogs there, I noticed on the way up there, when I passed the little creek, one time my dog wouldn't go any further, my lead dog. So I went up to see what the problem was, and I could hear water underneath trickling. And so I figured, okay. So I brought him on Name Your Lake, and he went just zigzagging through the overflow and found where there was no overflow. And that's how we finally got across.
Cool.
And we started trapping. So we set our traps out, and there was a lot of fur back then.
Yeah.
You would see the animals run across the cut line. You know the old story, you had to hide behind a tree to bait?
Yeah.
It was almost like that.
You made up that story, did you?
Yeah. But, fur was very plentiful. And
So how long were you in?
we were in there for 3 weeks, and we came out for Christmas.
Okay.
We should have never did that. We come out, it snowed like another 1.5 feet, and we never did go back.
Oh, really?
Never did go back.
How much fur did you bring out in the 3 weeks?
Oh, I can't remember exact numbers, but we had over 20 link.
Really?
Yeah.
In 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, and back then, of course, it was all footholds.
Yeah.
You know, that's all that we had. We had conifer bears. I remember 330s that we used for beavers.
Right.
But other than that, everything else was footholds.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That was 47 years ago.
That was 47 years ago. Yeah.
So obviously then you raised Kevin in the life,
Yes.
and you have a registered trap line.
I had we trapped for 22 years south of Fort McMurray by Egg Lake, which is about 40 miles by crow flies south of Fort McMurray, and so we trapped there for about 22 years, and then the fellow that was a senior, the senior has all the pull.
Yep.
And he decided that he didn't want me there anymore.
Yeah.
He had other plans. So he wouldn't sign me up. So I heard about this. My brother called me up one day, and he said there's a trap line opened up at Winterford Lake.
Okay.
And so I said, well, man, I wonder what's the chance of me getting that. So we applied for it, and what it was on a point system. So if you had a skidoo, you had points. If you had a quad, an Argo, a boat, a dog team.
A pulse.
Yeah. And also you had to show fur records from the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And you had to be a junior. You couldn't be a senior.
Okay.
So there was out of 80 that applied, I came out number 1. So
Good for you.
So I got the line, and that was always my dream, to have a trap line that I could catch a fish in front of the cabin.
Oh, yeah?
And that happened and was very true until now. It's catch and release.
Oh.
But I still can catch a fish.
So then along comes Kevin.
Kevin came along when we were south of McMurray.
Okay.
Yeah, and at that time we had to leave the trucks and go 16 miles by skidoo.
And what age did you start taking him along?
Actually,
I would have started out in a farm catching weasels and that kind of stuff at around 8 years old as well.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, somewhere around there.
he was
I
very,
think you
very
got the
young.
line. I would have been maybe 11, 10, maybe 12 at the most. Yeah.
Okay. And what did that change, him having a line?
Well, from my perspective, anyway, it gave us the chance to spend a weekend together. It was always a very fast-paced life back then. It seemed like no matter how hard you worked, you never had enough money to just take a vacation. So it allowed our family to become a family, more than just the everyday hustle and bustle of life, right? So I guess that was. Looking back at it, it was probably the best time of my childhood.
Yeah. Well, it ends up when you do those things together as a family, it becomes a vacation. Whether it's trapping or fishing or or going to Disneyland. I mean, but you're doing it together, and that I know I raised my kids the same way. We had nothing, but every Friday afternoon we were gone camping, and summer and winter whatever, because that was what was important to them. And it was we had 3 kids, and there was actually 5 kids in the household. Just 2 of them paid for the mortgage. That's all.
Yeah. Well, it must have looked pretty funny at some times, because I think we only had 1 skidoo for a good portion of that, so it looked probably like a little bit of a refugee situation with everybody hanging off of a portion of the sleigh just to get to the cabin, and that's what it was. My 2 sisters, Mom, myself, and Dad, and 1 skidoo, and all the stuff we needed for the weekend. That was our weekend.
We had a Tundra LT, long track.
Yeah.
And most of the times going up the hill, the skis were off the ground. Like, you just balanced it to keep it in the trail.
Yeah.
And that was how everybody came.
We had a musher type sleigh, so I would always ride on the back and help push up the hills and help steer the sleigh and whatever. And there was once or twice where I fell off and Dad didn't realize for maybe
A mile or
I
two.
hate to exaggerate, but probably 10 miles or so.
But you weren't worried. You just kept
Yeah.
walking because you knew when Dad figured it out, he'd come back.
Yeah, somebody would come back.
Yeah, I have quite a reputation of losing people and stuff. And now I have mirrors, which helps. But my youngest daughter, when she came with her boyfriend, they were in the back of the sleigh, and I came around the corner, and the sleigh flipped.
Oh.
So my son-in-law said, your dad's going to stop? And my daughter says, no, we better walk to the cabin.
So that trap line, what did you trap on it?
There was a lot of Marten on there. And not at first. We caught the odd fisher and the odd link, weasels, banks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Mostly a fisher line back then.
Yeah.
Those are mostly what we caught.
You caught a lot of fisher?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was about 1991 or 2 maybe. That was the first time we ever encountered a wolverine.
Yeah.
We never did catch him, but he tormented us for a winter, and that was where I got a fascination for him.
Oh, I think everybody has a fascination for wolverine.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of that apex predator to aim for in the trapping world. No question about it. So, how big was that trap line?
that was 6 by 8 miles.
10 by 10, eh?
10 by 10. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it was
that's
10
right.
by 10, so
10.
2.5 townships.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Okay. And
But and then one day, like Kevin at an early age, like I'd give him a chance and say, "You set a trap. You put it wherever you want." So he put this trap one day, and we come back, caught our first Marten.
there
That
you
was
go.
the first Marten we ever had got. And so the first year we caught 1, and then the second year we caught 3. Third year I think it was between 5 and 10, and then after that we took 40 every year.
Wow.
And so the Marten had just moved in.
Yeah.
And there was some big fires north of McMurray. We heard maybe they had got pushed down. I don't know if that was true or not, but it came around that time.
And I think a lot of it was evolving with learning how the animals work too back then. Looking at it from now, I think that numbers had a big part to play with it, but it was what bait to use, how to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just, and it sounds silly now. There's so much information on the internet, but back then nobody talked.
What's funny because I mean we get a lot of feedback and we get a lot of questions about what to do. I'm getting they're walking up to the box and they're turning it down and walking away. And do I need a different lure? And my beliefs are that if the animal's at the box, your lure did its job. Now it's your bait. It's your bait that failed. But you get a lot of those questions. And I think that the biggest question that everybody misses, and I torment you with this a lot, is why did you choose this spot to make the set? Because or to put in your bait station? Because that to me is far more important than what you're using for bait or anything else. Because you need to recognize that that's a spot for a wolverine or that's a spot for a fisher or Marten or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people miss that, and that's hard to translate onto YouTube, right? Onto the internet.
And it's also hard when you get put on the spot to answer it.
That's why I do it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that question today. I missed a lot of explanation there, but it just after you get experience, you just know.
Okay, and so tell me now what you know.
Oh, geez, on the spot again.
I know one, like I know what with me is you put your traps where you think they're good, and you soon get a record and say, well, shoot, this is the third one I got this year.
Yeah.
Or this is 2 years in a row. This is done good.
Yeah.
And the poor ones, you seem like you move them over there because it's better there. You see a game trail. You see tracks. And eventually, your trap line evolves around your experiences.
Well, that's very true. When people talk to me and they say, well, this is what my trap line looks like, and I'll say, well, what are you familiar with? how well do you know your trap line? Because that's when you're really going to discover where those trails, like you're explaining to the fellow today, where the wolves come through. You know that the wolves come through there, and that's a good that's where you're going to set up, right? But you don't get that until you come out and you work the trap line, right?
Burn a lot of gas.
That's right. Yeah, I mean it takes work to do that. So that's a big deal. The one that gets me is, we talked about this today out on the line, is I'll set a box up and it will do nothing for 3 years, but I'm driving by it anyway, so I set it every year. Then all of a sudden it catches on fire. I had one of them one do it this year on the trap line, and now I'm 3 marten and 2 fisher out of it, and this is the first year in 5 that it's caught anything. So then I'm thinking, so am I a genius, or was I like too far in advance, right?
Well, my theory on that is believing in your proposal.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you put it there for a reason, and if you thought it was a good spot at one time,
yeah,
you should continue to believe in it until it pays out. That, in my experience, we trap as a family, and a lot of times when my wife will put something or Connor will put something, and I'll look at it and I'll go, I don't even know why you put it there, but you know what? They believe in it, and, and eventually it'll pay off. I don't think that we've ever had a bum set on the line. Have we, Connor?
No.
Have we had a single setup that we never caught anything? I don't think we have.
No, not after this week.
No. So, that just shows that, for whatever reason, once you know what to look for and you believe in that setup, you shouldn't give up on it.
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, I'm always looking at habitat. I'm always looking at I like those edges. I like the edges between the evergreens and the conifer or the hardwood forest, and I like the edges, but where the willows are along the swamps. I like the creeks and that kind of stuff. So I'm always looking at that stuff, and to me, that's a natural, right? And you set on it, and then some of them just do not pay off for forever, and then all of a sudden they're on fire. So I don't know whether it's the population moves. I think good habitat. When you're nailing that habitat, it's eventually going to. The animals are going to be there. I mean, it's like trying to get rid of beavers. You can trap every beaver out of a slough or a creek or whatever, but if it's good habitat, in a couple of years, maybe later that year, there are beaver back there because that's a habitat, and they're going to be there. It's just neat though. I always like to talk to people. Like folks know Wolverine so well, so I'm trying to peer through your eyes a little bit there. Morley Smith, yeah, you folks know Morley. The guy can howl a wolf in. He knows wolves so well, and trying to peer through his eyes and the stuff that he sees. That's why I ask those questions. I'm trying to understand, because once you can see it, it makes such a huge difference in how successful you're going to be.
Yeah. I mean, and for people learning the trade or learning, the industry, whatever you want to, I guess there's a split thing on what people consider it. But, as people that are learning, I don't think that a lot of guys take enough time to understand what went wrong and what went right.
Well, so many of them though today they look up YouTube, and if you need to change the carbides on your Skidoo, you take a look on YouTube. That's how you do it, and they figure it's that same kind of thing for trapping. Well, trapping also has there's a spiritual side to trapping, where you have to have some intuition, right? It can't be taught. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand a little bit about what's going on. So how did we end up here in Steen River?
Oh. Well, we're both in the airplane business, and I had my own little business going on. I was a little stubborn as well and wanted to try it out. So I was doing that, and had an opportunity up here to sell the business and move up here and manage a bigger company. And I don't know what it was. I can't explain it till today. Joni and I came up. Kids were little. Our youngest was 6 months old, I think, 7 months old. We came up here and high level fell like home instantly.
Okay.
And we moved here. We took a chance on it, and it really paid off for us. We grew the business here, helped grow the business. I'm now the chief operating officer of that company. And when I moved up here, I think we had about 5 airplanes and 18 employees.
And what exactly does this business do?
Well, we specialize in air ambulance service. So between Dad and myself, we actually provide all of the aircraft for the province of Alberta.
That's very cool.
Air ambulance.
Very cool.
So we run a fairly large company now, or help run it. I mean, we have a team of great people around us, but what sent us to Steen River, I can't explain it till today. Literally, it was a weekend we had off, and we wanted to go camping somewhere. And there's an abandoned campsite right across the road from where we are right now. They abandoned it in the 80s. It used to be a Steen River campsite. And
like one of the government of Alberta things.
That's right. That's right.
That we used to have everywhere, and now we have none of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's still soggy firewood there. But
I knew the guy that had the contract to supply that.
we drug our fifth wheel there, and we just went exploring. We didn't even own a quad back then, and we found this place. And this place was all overgrown. You couldn't drive a quad down here for the life of you. It was overgrown, and we went onto the riverbank, and we looked into the river, and it was just home. And just by absolute fluke, answered an ad in the newspaper. It was about 3 years later. It was at your house. It was in the Alberta Trappers magazine. It was a classified ad. Guy advertising a trap line north of High Level. I had no idea it was this one.
No way.
I wrote the guy a letter, and trying to remember, but it was from the heart. I remember that. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I just explained my situation. I explained how much we missed trapping. We couldn't do it. We were away from our family. We had to come here for a career move, whatever. And he replied instantly. It was for sale for several years. And he had, people replying for the wrong reasons.
Right.
He wanted it to go to the right family. And I guess he thought we were the right family. So made him an offer on it. It was a progressive takeover. I had to be a junior on it for a few years with the new regulations and everything. So we came in, we put a wall tent here. We cleared this whole thing by hand, Joni, Connor, myself. I don't know how many gallons of chainsaw gas we burned, but I wore out, I think, 3 chainsaws here.
Yeah.
And,
and 2 quads.
Yeah, 2 quads. And, life just got better. Every day got better that we were here.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I mean, just the thought of when you're not here, thinking about getting back here.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, and the kids growing up, like, I mean, I understand this because we had places that we did random camping too when our kids were small, and they had, their forts, and they had all that stuff planned that, that they continued on. Their play of the weekend would be interrupted for the week, but they was there again on the weekend, and it just added so much cohesion and that to the family, right? We could know that they were off there, they're fishing down at the beaver pond or whatever, and Sandy and I could sit by the fire and unwind, or we'd go on a hike up the hill or whatever, right? Yeah. You had this to come to and work on, right?
Yeah, and because of, well, depending on what end of the spectrum you are, but it could be bad genetics or good genetics. Can't do anything a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I have that one too.
So we didn't come out here just to relax. We came out here to trap, and every morning the kids were little. Looking back at it now, I probably should have been charged for child abuse, but we were bringing our kids out. It was minus 35, and we were going out and putting 100 miles on in a day, and they were little. Looking back at the pictures now, I mean, we were probably crazy, but
it still worked.
Yeah, it worked.
We need more of that in today's world, and not less, more.
Yeah.
So you started trapping, and you didn't know what you had here, right?
Not initially. The guy I bought it from, he knew there was wolverines, for example, out here. The odd link, he told me when I bought it. And, they were your typical weekend warrior sort of type people. They lived in Edmonton. They would come out here a few times a year. They would set a few traps. Probably didn't take the time to understand the animal, to understand the area, understand what bait to use, and just understand it all. Not to mention, there wasn't a single trail open here our first year. Like everything that we saw today was networked by a lot of, you'd spend a week sometimes getting to the end of a cut line, and it just dead ends, right?
Yeah.
Oh, now what? So, it took us about 3 years, I would say, before we got like a useful network of trails, and I mean, it's not even close to done now.
People have no idea the amount of work involved in that, do they?
Yeah.
Like you can burn 2 tanks of chainsaw fuel going the length of your cabin sometimes. And you have 8 townships here, right?
8 townships, 12 miles by 24 miles.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's big country. It's big country.
Yeah. So when did you start getting a handle on what kind of fur was here?
Well, it was the first year that we seriously trapped. I think we were struggling finding where they were, finding the habitat to set in, finding how to. It was a struggle, and it was the very last weekend. It was February 12th or 14th.
14th, I think.
February 14th. So
Yeah.
it was the day before the end of season. That's February 15th up here.
Yeah.
We went out to pull the line, and we caught 3 wolverines in a row.
Bang, bang, bang.
One after another within a 10-kilometer stretch. We had 3 wolverines, and I think we got 4 lynx or something like that same day. And that's things started to mesh together. We might have got a couple fishers that day too. And it was a big day for us. Like it was a lot of empty. A lot of things just weren't working up till that day, and it meshed together. So you spend the whole next year building off of that, and.
Hey, were you doing the bait station at that point?
No, yeah, we were, but not with the cages. We were actually hand building them with wood, and
Right.
It was Dad that sort of led us to that idea the second year.
Well, the problem with the wood is the wolverine would walk right through the side of it, right?
And we were having that problem a lot.
Yeah.
and they were, we were losing more than we were catching. And
Right.
So the second year, it was kind of a funny story. We built off that surge there at the end, and I thought, well, we're really going to get ahead of it, so we're going to get a bunch of bait. So we went out in the fall. I think it was Thanksgiving weekend. We got like 30 beaver, and I read on the internet, okay, if you get them stinky, they're going to work way better.
Uh-huh.
So I hung them on that hanging pole outside, and I had we deboned a moose, right? Like we deboned the whole moose. We had all this bait, and I put a tarp around it so that birds and stuff wouldn't get at it. And I had to go to the States somewhere, and Joni and the kids came up, opening day, November 1. She calls me, she said, something ate all of our bait. I said, what do you mean something ate all of our bait? Like, that was only like 5-6 days ago, and something ate all of our bait. Like, all of those beavers, like, nothing's there? She says, no. I said, well, send me a picture. She sent me a picture, and I said, that's wolverines. She said, well, what do I do? And I said, well, just take some bait that's left, because there was a few little bones and stuff there hanging, and I said, shove it in a box, like a 330, double cubby box, and see what happens. So she did that just around the cabin. I mean, within a few hundred yards from the cabin, and woke up in the morning. There was 3 wolverines that she had caught in the site of the cabin.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's when we knew we had something special, and it just went on from there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, the area you're in here, between the rivers, is pretty unique for the amount of wolverine that are here.
Yeah.
Like you were telling me that it's like some of the highest population of wolverine in all of Alberta, if not North America.
Yeah, definitely in Alberta, this would be the highest population of wolverines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without a doubt. We saw one today.
Yeah, I know. That was just amazing.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. So now, once you moved on into using the stucco wire cage, now anybody watch the show, you'll see from last year, from season 4, how he uses the stucco wire to make these bait stations and catches both lynx and wolverine. And everybody thinks that wolverine are so incredibly intelligent that they, the steel would put them off. It doesn't. It doesn't. So using that made it much more controllable for you.
Yeah, and we talking with the biologists and stuff, and we always had a very open relationship with them. Very transparent. I fed off of them; they fed off of me. We were bouncing ideas off on what we really truly had here, because nobody had knew up till now. So we knew that the balance was off here. I think the first year we had caught, I think it was over 12 wolverines, somewhere around 12. And I think we caught less lynx than we caught wolverines, and so the balance was totally off. And
You had too many apex predators that were eating everything else.
Yeah, and it was impossible to catch a marten or anything else because the wolverines were just batting down the marten boxes and making a mess of everything. So we needed to come up with a bit of a strategy, and my strategy was to use a more universal trap like this bait station that we showcased in the last few shows.
Yeah.
To so that they wouldn't be able to come and destroy a set. We might start weeding a few of them out, if you will.
And you said, and I found this really unique because, I mean, you understand your area and you understand the animals far better than anybody else. But you said that it's useless trying to trap marten in boxes around here, that all the years you've maybe caught 20 marten. But because you've got that box there with meat in it, well, that becomes a play toy for the wolverine, one after another after another.
That's all they are.
Yeah.
Pretty expensive play toys.
Exactly.
The one year, Dad got an assembly line going at work to build marten boxes for us because the wolverine kept on eating them.
Oh, man.
I think we built 300 that year, and I think 2 years later we didn't even have one of those left.
No.
That's how many we were going through at first, right?
And it's amazing how adept they are at peeling that trap out of there and destroying the box.
Yeah.
They don't even set it off.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I had a bear do that one year.
Really?
I mean, bears are dicks. I mean, I always say that, but I had a bear. It was a grizzly, and which is really odd because there are no grizzly in Alberta, and especially where I am, it would be like you having grizzly here. It's unusual. But it was end of November, and he was still out. And he hit one part of my marten line, and he hit 8 boxes in a row. He peeled the traps out of it, and then he ripped the back off the box and take the meat. The last one, he took the box and everything. I had this image in my mind of him going down the trail with my box under his arm. So now that you've got some idea, and you're working with the biologists, what are the wolverine numbers? Like, I mean, the biggest thing about wolverine is nobody knows anything. It's a study that Alberta Conservation Association has done with the trappers. They have bait stations and run poles to take pictures and that. And all of a sudden we discovered that we have way more wolverine than we ever dreamt we had.
Yeah.
And now in this area here, of course, your wolverine numbers are off the charts.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. I mean, we caught 2 today, and that's not really all that uncommon up here in this Beastie Lake area of the province. That's I don't know why they're so thick and so plentiful up here, but obviously the food sources, everything's working. There's a lot of theories out there, but everything's working right here. They're very healthy, very healthy.
And I guess here, I mean, their number one food must be rabbit.
I believe they would be.
Yeah. And yet that's not what you use for bait.
No, link. I mean, everything needs link here. I believe we even use link for marten.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's amazing because we always talk about a bait having a strong odor and that kind of stuff, and link is like as plain as it gets. Like we. I imagine you guys have all ate lynx.
Yeah.
I have too, and I mean it's really good eating if you get a fresh one. And but we always call it the other white meat because it's just white and it's like caribou. It tastes like whatever you put on it. If you put salt on it, it tastes like salt. If you put hot sauce on it, it tastes like hot sauce. It really doesn't have its own flavor whatsoever, and yet it makes such a great bait.
Yeah,
that's so strange.
And beaver doesn't work up here.
Yeah.
If you hang a link from a tree and a beaver from the same tree, and we've done this, they won't touch the beaver over the link.
Well, we had 2 really cool things happen today. Now, between the 3 of you, probably about 100 years worth of trapping experience now, and we had one really, really cool thing that was the first time ever, and that was we had a wolf stick its head in a 330 body grip. So every one of these bait stations have a 330 body grip within the stucco wire cage, and then there are lynx snares around the outside. Wolves never come near steel on my line.
No.
Just never do. And you've never seen this in all your years of trapping, or yours, but it's got to be an 80 or 85 pound wolf. Like, it's not a pup.
No.
And he took and shoved his head in the 330, dead as a stone, sitting there. Yeah, it was just amazing. Just amazing. I'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
And then we had another thing that was, I guess you've seen this before, but one of the dangers when you have these set up for the lynx, lynx will walk around. Most often, they'll walk around the bait station. They don't, not very often. Although today we got a couple of them that went into the body grip trap. But usually, you catch them in the snares around the outside, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so, talk about that snare and what you do so that you don't catch a wolverine in that snare.
Yeah, we try to typically put them a little higher than normal to just target link. So, I mean, I think a perfect height for link would be about 12 inches. We like to put ours here, 15 to even 16 inches high. And the wolverines don't get caught in them usually. Today one did. But you'll miss a few link. You'll miss a few smaller ones, but you'll still get the adults. So it works out. And also too, it compensates for the snow, right? If you get more snow,
right,
then it evens out. But we caught a wolverine today, and
well, actually, it was a lynx. We had a lynx in one of the snares, right?
Yeah.
And the wolverine come up, and it looked like he was going to eat it.
Yeah.
Because he kind of dug the snow off it. But then, for whatever reason, he decided he had to go for a little romp around the circle.
Yeah, probably to mark his territory. They like to do that so that nothing else comes to eat it. Because they're not going to eat it all at once. He's going to eat a little bit, and then he's going to come back.
Oh, okay.
So I'm guessing he went to mark his territory and got caught in a lynx snare.
So he gets caught in a lynx snare, and of course, the wolverine is very aggressive. They'll oftentimes just roll over on their back, and they'll chew out of it, or they roll a lot. They roll a lot, just like when you're fishing for Lakers. Lakers are terrible for that, for rolling in the line. And this guy didn't get out of the snare. The snare unwound from the tree. I guess your daughter had said it, right?
Yeah.
And he says right on camera, he says, "Well, oftentimes we catch the wolverine with the snare on it, and you went and tracked it back through the bush a bit, and off we go. 1 kilometer down the trail, half a mile, and there is a wolverine in a 330 body grip, and guess what? It's got a snare on its neck.
Yeah. Twisted thousands and thousands and thousands of times, right?
Just absolutely amazing. I thought that was very insightful, but that brings me to something else that you said that I found to be really insightful, and I've thought about it all day long. Talk about when they take over a wolf bait.
Yeah, so up here, because of the high population of them, I mean, I think this isn't standard for most areas. Most areas may have 1 or 2 wolverines kicking around in their area. Up here, there may be 5, 6, 7 that'll start to come to a wolf bait. So when that happens, no other animals come. So before wolverines show up, it's a plentiful, fruitful environment. Everybody's coming to the wolf bait. You can get link, you can get fishers, you can get wolves, coyotes, fox, all kinds of stuff. A wolverine shows up and does their thing, and everything disappears. You might as well write the bait off. You might as well just take all your wolf snares off, and just feed the wolverines.
So what? They push everything off. They're a bully, or
they mark all the food.
So they pee on everything.
They pee on everything.
Okay.
And like I tell people sometimes, I say, imagine a bait station, a wolf bait as an office party, a coffee room in an office, and somebody brings in donuts, and everyone's enjoying themselves, having donuts, coming and going, and going back to their cubicles to work and coming, and all of a sudden the loud guy at the office shows up and comes in and grabs about 10 donuts and licks them all and puts them back and starts telling jokes that you heard 100 times before, and everybody just leaves. And the only guy left.
You've met my brother.
Yeah, that's right. So the only guy left there is the guy that licked all the donuts, right? So how do you catch the guy that licked all the donuts? Well, you use his donuts that he licked, and you'll catch him. So we found that if you try to put new bait, it won't work. You have to use what they've scented, what they've marked as theirs. And you take that bait and make a set, and usually you'll catch your culprit.
So this is really insightful. You take what they've already what they've marked. They've called it mine. And you take and throw that in a box, put a trap in front of it, and they'll want to go get it back.
Yeah, because
it's
somebody
theirs.
moved. Yeah, somebody moved it. It's theirs, and they don't think about why somebody moved it. Just somebody moved it, and it's theirs.
That's amazing.
They're going to go get it.
I mean, I just think about it it's sitting there and they pee on it there. But if I move it over here now they got to. What are they going to do? Are they going to move it back, or they just got to pee on it again?
Well, I'm not sure. We've just, we've played around with it a little bit, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, we've always just put it in a cubby of some sort and caught them. So
that's very insightful. I like that. I mean, that's actually talking to the animal, understanding it. And those kind of insights I enjoy. You've been quiet, big guy.
Yeah.
What's this life like?
I don't know what to say, honestly. When Dad came home and told us he got signed up on a trap line, I was quite excited. And the first year of trapping, I hated it, to be honest with you.
Why is that?
I didn't know how to drive a skidoo.
Oh,
and
you got over that.
Yeah, I got over that. I love it now. But I just hated skidooing. But after that, we just kind of learned, and I set my own line around the cabin here.
Yeah.
We got 10 kilometers, and we always catch the first wolverine around the cabin.
Yeah.
But we don't really set it now because it's a waste of time.
Oh.
We only catch wolverine, so we don't set that much anymore. But it was every year it got more and more fun, interesting, and learned a lot more, and got us all in great shape because there's no sports up here.
Right.
So cutting trails and trees and all that, it's pretty good exercise.
It's a great way to vent, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
To get out and just some days even at my age, you're unhappy with life, and you get out there and you start swinging an axe or running a chainsaw, and somewhere during that day of 5 gallons of chainsaw gas or whatever, all of a sudden all those problems disappear, right?
Yeah.
And you feel good after it all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being outdoors now is one of my favorite things. I can't sit on the couch and play video games or nothing. I don't like that.
That's a good thing.
But yeah, so we came out here every weekend. Friday night, I'd pack the truck. Dad would get home and we'd take off.
Yeah.
And spend the weekend out here, and catch a couple things and head home.
That's fascinating. So, do you do the skinning as well?
I help. I don't skin. I just flesh.
Oh,
board.
you flesh? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, my mom does most of the fleshing. She's way better at it. But,
yeah, she's a very competent lady when it comes to this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, last year we had a system going up. These two skinned. My mom fleshed. We had another guy fleshing, and I bored.
Yeah.
So
what did you have to put up last year?
I think we did somewhere around 50 link in 2 days, and we had I think around 4 wolverine and 5 fishers and some martens. So it was a decent year last year.
Yeah. Oh, that is amazing.
We did it all in one weekend.
Yeah. Well, up here it's easy for things to stay frozen. Yeah. It was it was 32 below this morning.
Yeah.
Every day you go out and the snowmobile starts, it's like, oh, that was a good day. Well, I really want to thank you, folks. This is my second trip up here. I love it up here. You've got an incredible piece of heaven. And I enjoy the knowledge. I enjoy the camaraderie. I really love seeing the young folks up. Your sisters aren't here this time,
No.
Which is too bad because we had so much fun with them last time.
Yeah.
But I got to meet you and hear the stories and see where he came from, and it's all becoming clearer. So I really want to thank you for having me here, and I want to thank you for doing the podcast with me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming.
You.
Okay, and thank you, folks, for watching, and maybe we'll see you down the line.
I wrote the song Poor Poor Trapper when I was 17 years old. That's 47 years ago. It goes like this. Oh, we're poor trappers, what are you gonna do? We're poor trappers, filled with caribou. We're poor trappers, always on the go, trying to put them traps out before there's too much snow. We got ourselves a dog team, we also got skidoos. It seems we're working round the clock with so much yet to do. We got a net to set, we got some wood to make. We gotta build a cabin before it's all too late. Oh, we're poor trappers, what are you gonna do? We're poor trappers, filled with caribou. We're poor trappers, always on the go, trying to put them traps out before there's too much snow. I woke up one morning feeling mighty cold. I glanced out the window, the dogs are covered with snow. So we ate our pancakes and slept right outside. Why, it was so bloody cold, we nearly froze alive. Oh, we're poor trappers, what are you gonna do? We're poor trappers, filled with caribou. We're poor trappers, always on the go. We're trying to put them traps out before there's too much snow. The mice are chewing at the furs, the moths are helping too. We're trying all we can, but there's not much we can do. The mice are chewing at the fish, the wolves are eating our meat, and we have to stay up all night, we're really getting beat. Oh, we're poor trappers, what are you gonna do? We're poor trappers, filled with caribou. We're poor trappers, always on the go. We're trying to put them traps out before there's too much snow. But we have our freedom, we can do what we want. It's not like in the city where you can't even take a walk. The scenery is so lovely, the lakes are so darn nice. It beats a Paris and Rome and all the city lights. Oh, we're poor trappers, what are you gonna do? We're poor trappers, filled with caribou. We're poor trappers, and I'll always be. Cause poor trapping, cause trapping is for me.
Thank you, sir.